Welcome to today's Crosspoint Devotion. I hope you're having a great week. Today I want to go and talk about the shortest verse in the entire Bible. It's found in John chapter 11 and it's found in verse 35, and it says, Jesus wept. Jesus wept. Back when I was a child, we participated, my church did, in Bible drills, and so we had to learn as many verses as we could. Oftentimes we had a list of verses that they gave us, but our teacher would always try to encourage us to know that we could memorize verses, and so she would always encourage us to start with the simplest and the shortest, Jesus wept, from John 11:35. Many of you have probably heard that verse, and probably some of you have used that verse when you've been asked to quote a verse from memory. You just always quoted, Jesus wept. Well, there's a lot of interesting nuances when we begin to think about why Jesus wept. Now, if you know the context, you know that in John chapter 11, Lazarus, whom I believe was a really close friend of Jesus, has died. I have said to our church family many times, Jesus had 12 disciples, but he had 3 really close friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. I don't know what it was about them, but I just think Jesus found their home and their friendship to be very appealing, and he went and spent time with them as often as he possibly could. So when Lazarus dies, I believe that Jesus arrived late on purpose because he was in God's timing for him to come and to illustrate not just what he was going to say, I am the resurrection and the life. He was going to visually demonstrate he was the resurrection and life by calling Lazarus forth from the tomb after 4 days, which in Jewish circles meant the death was certain. As long as you had the first 3 days, there was a chance that body could come back to life. But on the 4th day, it was in certainty that that person was dead. So there was a timing effect that Jesus shows up 4 days late. Everybody in the Jewish community had completely given up on Lazarus coming back to life. And then Jesus comes and says, I'm the resurrection and the life. And then he calls Lazarus forth from the tomb and illustrates that he is the resurrection and the life. But it says there in the midst of this story, Jesus wept. It's often made me ask, why? Well, one reason could be that Jesus is weeping because both Mary and Martha, when they approach him before he calls Lazarus forth from the tomb, he could be disappointed with their lack of trust in him. Both of them come out of their house when they find out Jesus has arrived, and they go straight to Jesus and say, if you'd been here, our brother wouldn't be dead. And so there's a little bit of a blame game going on. Both of these sisters immediately want to say, Jesus, you could have stopped this. And maybe Jesus is crying because he's disappointed that his friends didn't have more trust in him. That's one reason. It could be, some have said, that Jesus knows when he calls Lazarus forth from the grave, Lazarus is only going to get a temporary resurrection. He's still a human being. He's still going to die at some point in the future. So Jesus is going to call him forth only to let him die again. Some have suggested maybe Jesus wept because he knew when he called Lazarus forth from the tomb, Lazarus was going to have to leave the glories of being in the presence of God and return to a sin-dominated earth. All of those are legitimate options, but maybe what follows is the real answer to our question, why did Jesus weep? Because in the very next verse, after verse 35, the short verse, Jesus wept, it says this, so the Jews said, see how he loved him. I think the reason Jesus wept is because he truly loved Lazarus. He was his close friend. He had incredible love for him. And it broke his heart to know that his dear friend Lazarus was in the tomb and his sisters were brokenhearted and the community was devastated. And Jesus just loved people so much that when he saw people hurting, he wept. I think it shows us the great compassion of the Savior that we serve. If you know Jesus as your Savior, know that he loves you dearly. He loves you enough to send his own life to the cross. He voluntarily laid down his life for you and for me. Why? Because he loved us. That's the kind of Savior that we serve. A Savior who loves us so much that our sin, our struggles, our hurt, our heartache break his heart too. So today I want you to know that you're serving a God who loves you intently, so much so that he sent Jesus, but you're also serving Jesus, who's filled with love and compassion for you. And your hurts are moving his heart. And I hope that'll encourage you to know that that's the kind of Savior that we serve. Well, I hope that'll encourage you, and I hope you have a great day.